This is the one I'm talking about. Which one is that? Wild Condiment. I've got it. It's not full edition. Yeah, so it's so good. And I was like, I still have the pricing as well. Right. Probably just go for deals. I was like, whenever you find it. I used to go to
Alright, thanks everyone for coming to this lightning talk session. This is the end of the open source stream and it's almost the end of the conference. Thanks for staying awake for this whole time. We have a series of folks talking. Just for our first name list, we're getting from Andrew, Libby, Nathan, Ari, Natalie, Dinah. If you're giving a lightning talk, please introduce yourself. You have 5 to 7 minutes. I think I still have one open spot, so if you're really motivated to jump up here and share some news, please see me. I'll be milling around the back.
Hi everybody, my name is Andrew Weaver. I'm the Digital Infrastructure and Preservation Librarian at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. I'm just going to start with saying, sorry, this is a little bit ad-lib because Dave guilted me into doing this and I don't have any slides. But I'm going to talk about the FF Improviser project. Who here knows about FF Improviser? Excellent, I'm glad that some people know about this. So basically what FF Improviser is a, it started out at a AMIA Hack Day event, and it was organized by Ashley Bluer. And it was intended to make kind of the a guide to the tool FFmpeg, which is one of the, I personally think, most important tools for audiovisual archivists to know when it comes to command line tools. But it's not always the most obvious and easy to use tool. So this is a way to kind of focus towards archivists and make that a little bit easier to approach. So what it is a website through the AMIA open source GitHub page. And it is broken down into lots of subcategories that you can click through to. And it will give you tons and tons of annotated handy tricks to do with FFmpeg. So I don't want to say everything's in there, but almost anything that you could want to do is at least somewhat represented in there. And if it's not, it's growing pretty rapidly. But one thing that I don't know how often people use this, but one thing that has changed over the last 6 months or so is that within the Improviser crew, there was talk about expanding it outside of just FFmpeg. So there has been quite a bit of recent efforts, let's see if I can scroll down and find it. Actually, I'll use the index. To expand it to other tools that, I'm not sure how to use this computer, other tools that are also applicable to AV archivists. So I can speak, I guess, personally to some of my commits recently are to do with things like the accurate capture of audio seeds and things like that, using other command line tools. So it's still kind of focused on tools built around command line that archivists might use, but is not exclusively FFmpeg anymore, although it still heavily is. There's currently plans to develop it out into including things more like exit tool, maybe some legacy tools like socks, if people are familiar with those kind of things. But that is where it's going to grow. So everybody please keep following it and keep posting issues for anything that we can do to change it. Not only in the context of using this tool is what I want to talk about, but I also kind of want to talk about contributing to this tool and encourage everybody out there to maybe take a stab at least opening issues on this page for any kind of requests, or if you do something in your job and you found it really, really helpful, using some kind of tool like FFmpeg or one of the other command line tools that we're focusing on or planning on focusing on, either post an issue and include that command and say, hey, this was really great, I use this, or think about adding it yourself. I was really pleased to become one of the maintainers of this project last year, and I really have to say that in my kind of weekly work, this is one of the most fulfilling things I do, is participating in this project, because it really gives a sense of something that's going out to the community and being used by the community, and that makes me feel happy. And so if you guys contribute, it might make you feel really happy too. So please, never hesitate. It's a very friendly community, and it also has specific contributor code of conducts and stuff, so we enforce them. So we will guarantee that nobody will be mean to you, and if somebody would ever be mean to you, we will shut them down very quickly, but it won't happen. How much time do I have, Dave?
What? Over here, hey.
How much time do I have?
You're still good.
Yeah.
You got like 2 more minutes.
Oh, cool.
You want to take some questions?
Yeah, I'll take some questions. Anything anyone want to know? Anything anyone want to see? We have some cool gifts in here.
What's your favorite?
My favorite command is probably, okay, this is embarrassing. The one I use the most is how to make GIFs. Because it's a lot of fun, and once you know how to make GIFs with FFmpeg, then when you're online and you're like, wow, I really just want to post this witty GIF, but I can't find somebody who's already made it. You can take a video and make your own GIF, and then you can like rule Twitter. It's great. So if it doesn't only help you rule the archives, it helps you rule Twitter. Anything else?
Who do you want to see in there next?
Me? What I personally am thinking about adding next is something to do with capturing optical media, since I just added some things about capturing optical media for audio CDs, CDDs. I think the next logical step is to get some things in there about some of the command line tools to get things like DVDs and more disk imaging in that sense. The only problem I'm struggling with there is the formula that I normally use for that I stole from somebody else. So I'm trying to figure out an elegant way to add that into here with proper attribution, so it's not like I'm just claiming everything. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Libby Hophoff. I'm the Program Manager and Audiovisual Archivist at Moving Image Preservation and Puget Sound and the Project Audiovisual Archivist at Seattle Municipal Archives. And I am here to tell you about an incredibly exciting project. In June of this year, MePops and Ricecapades submitted an application to the National Endowment for the Humanities for a grant to fund a project entitled DVD Rescue. Yay! The project will develop procedures and tools that will support migration data from DV tapes into digital files suitable for long-term preservation. This will fill an urgent need for DV tape transfer tools that can rescue content from at-risk videotape formats. The DV Rescue project will entail 2 years of work to develop open source and freely available software, user research, testing, and create documentation to help define and perform comprehensive, automated, and easy-to-use data migration techniques. MePops will collaborate with Ricecapades in consulting and development, and they will we will work on a large number of tapes throughout collections from various institutions across the United States. And yeah, do you guys have any questions about this? We're supposed to hear back next week, but if we don't get funding from NEH, we would also really love to just keep going. We'll get funding somewhere, but we know that this is a really urgent need. And at MePops, we're working on a lot of DD projects with thousands and thousands of tapes, and right now I'm using Premiere Pro, and it's killing me. So this will be a really important opportunity to create this program that's desperately needed. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Where we're gonna be able to get updates about this program?
Like meaning to know that
to follow the updates of what you are doing on this project.
It will be hosted on GitHub once we get going with it. We're just waiting to hear about funding so that we can do it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you planning for it to be a cross-platform solution?
Dave, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So basically, Rescapades will be doing development and we'll be helping with testing, and then Meepops is going to go around and do like some tutorials and get people set up with it and show them all the really cool utilities, do blog posts, and like really demonstrate the different utilities that will be incorporated into it. Okay.
There we go. Close it. Presented. Yes. Great. Got it. It's unprecedented review. I hope that you guys can forgive. Okay, so I am Nathan Avent. I am the volunteer archivist and a board member at Rainbow History Project in Washington, D.C. And I want to use this time to quickly tell you guys about the 1 in 10 People digitization project. I think it'll be a change of pace because I'm going to talk about the way that I have utilized all of the AMIA open source and AMIA community's work in order to make this project possible when it would not have been otherwise. So a little bit about us. Started in the year 2000. It was a group of gay and lesbian activists in Washington, D.C. who recognized that there was a need to collect oral histories from the Washington, D.C. LGBTQ community. 18 years later, the board has expanded. I joined 2 years ago. We have a growing collection. It's a lot of physical media and digital objects. And then with this donation I'm going to talk about here, we started collecting analog video. So what was donated to us is the rushes and master tapes from 1 in 10 People. It was a public access show produced out of Fairfax Public Access in the mid-90s. Very low budget, all volunteer cast and crew, but they managed to produce a really professional looking 60-minute style news magazine focusing on issues that are relevant to the gay and lesbian community in the Metro DC area. This is what I received, 2 boxes, 32 U-matic tapes, 92 high-8 camcorder tapes, 11 VHS tapes, which were mostly screeners and source footage from other similar programs around the country. There was an interesting thing that was going on in the mid-90s in public access TV, especially in gay and lesbian shows, where they would share segments among each other, so you could see what was going on in Chicago, what was going on in LA, and I think that somebody should do a session about that, because it's really cool. So this probably would be a drop in the bucket to a larger institution, but the Rainbow History Project, we have no money and no people, and this was incredibly daunting to us. Outsourcing was cost prohibitive. The lowest estimate that we got was larger than our yearly operating budget, which is low. We didn't have a digitization program at the time. And if we set one up, it was going to be yours truly who was going to have to run all of it. But still, given all that, when the board asked me, can we do this in-house? I looked at the U-matic tapes, which were so at risk, and I said, yes, of course we can. So this was my strategy. I don't know how I'm doing all the time. This was my strategy, which I will enumerate. The first thing was I didn't want to have to reinvent the wheel by creating this workstation. I have attended a few AMIAs, I've seen these resources around, and I made use of them immediately. So the Minimum Viable Station documentation by Ashley Bluer is awesome and amazing, and I suspect many of you have contributed to that document, and I thank you for that. Dorothea Salo's Pravda build documentation was also extremely useful, but especially the DC Public Library's Memory Lab equipment list, which is online. It came out of some work that Jamie Mears did as an NDSR resident, but it's been expanded since then, and it's really just a great resource. If you go to that URL, there's diagrams, there's really specific equipment lists, it's awesome. Also, I ended up reusing a lot of things, begging, borrowing, stealing. You can see here, I'll also thrill at my workstation in my home office and how beautiful it is. The biggest ticket items were the Blackmagic capture device, which I needed in order to use vRecord, the time-based corrector, and I was thrilled to get this Mac Mini, 2014 Mac Mini, and the monitor for $300 just off of Craigslist. These are the software tools that I used, that I'm continuing to use. vRecord is the backbone of it. If you guys were in the vRecord session earlier, you know how awesome vRecord is. Also, many of you are vRecord developers, and I thank you for that very deeply. VLC for QC and playback in association with QC tools. rsync for file transfers. That's just built into the operating system, but it's free still. FFmpeg for everything, right? Internet Archive is our access system. And inventory control initially was Google Sheets, but we've actually since then received a much larger donation that requires a more sophisticated inventory system, so we're migrating everything to ABCC, which is an 80% product. So, yeah, and FF Improviser, which you just saw, and it's great and it's awesome. The thing that's great about FF Improviser is that I'm a command line newbie. I found it terrifying before I got into this project. I knew that all these tools existed, so I just did a lot of Googling, a lot of looking at my notes from previous AMIAs. And FF Improviser basically enabled me to use FFmpeg to its fullest in a way that I never would have been able. I couldn't put those formulas together myself as a greenhorn. So another thing that enabled this is just asking for help. Brother Help Thyself is an organization in the Washington, D.C. area that gives out basically like micro grants, and they gave us $790, which basically covered this workstation, which was amazing and extremely helpful. And then also Siobhan Hagan at AMIA loaned me for 48 hours her Umatic deck, which I used to digitize all 27 Umatic tapes in one hectic weekend. And on the 27th tape, that Umatic deck promptly died, which we tried to get it fixed. It turned out it needed a part that doesn't exist anymore. So I am eternally grief-stricken, but Siobhan was very graceful about it. Because it's AMIA, here's a workflow chart. Something that you might notice on the right side, the QC processing, I'm actually doing on this 2009 MacBook Pro. I had intended to do the whole workflow, start to end on the Mac Mini, but it's just not powerful enough for that. When I try to do any sort of processing with FFmpeg on the 2014 Mac Mini, it just chugs and takes way longer than is acceptable. So I end up having to offload everything to the Mac. I'm using rsync to pull things on and off the hard drives, but it's still too many file transfers to make me happy. So the first upgrade that I'm going to do to the system is to get a better Mac Mini or something else as the center of it, so I don't have to move computers to do QC. But we were able to digitize all 27 episodes from the master files. We're pretty far into the raw at this point. They're all on Internet Archive right now. You can go watch them. You can search Rainbow History Project or 1 in 10 People. You know, if nothing else, you can enjoy the haircuts. So, any questions? I might be at my time. Is there anybody have any questions? Cool. Oh,
But it's super useful. Would you mind sharing your slides?
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Dave, I'll send them to you. Is that okay? I don't know. I'll show them somehow. There's my Twitter at Anthony Matt. I'll tweet it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Ari Levine. I am the Assistant AV Archivist at Moving Image Preservation of Puget Sound. MePops is a tiny little two-person operation working in Seattle. We work with local libraries, archives, and museums to help them transfer their analog tapes to digital formats. We kind of have a unique model that's like based on education. So we train a representative from each partner institution on how to digitize their material. And then we also do some like training, guidance, planning on long-term digital preservation strategies for the files that they make with us. We work with organizations that run the gamut from having really well-established digital preservation plans, they have digital asset managers, they have an IT team, they have hosting platforms, all the way to organizations who like really only have the hard drive that they bought to like take the files that we make with them home, and that's kind of it. So that being said, MEPOPs tailors what we do with each of our partners a little differently. So for organizations with really well-established digital preservation processes, we will provide them like MP4 access files as well as archival information packages, which include the original MKV for organizations. And then they can, like, if you have a dance and a well-established digital preservation plan, like we kind of, in conversation with them, we'll be like, do you know what to do with this? And if they're like, yes, we have a plan, like, then we're like, okay, great. For organizations that just kind of have like a hard drive and they don't have a broader strategy, we provide them with the same MP4 access copies, we provide them with those apes, but we also write their files to our LTO tapes in-house. I was asked to talk a little bit about the open source tool that we use to make our archival information packages, and that tool is called Video Ape. It was created by Puget Sound and Vision, which is mostly a project of Andrew Weavers, who is a MEPOPs archivist at large, and he helps us out with this, and I use it all the time, and anytime I have a problem, I just send him a G-chat, I'm like, can you fix this? And he fixes it right away. So if you use this and have any problems, just G-chat him and he'll operate on that for you. He also sends you music recommendations all the time, so just ignore that and just get right to the good stuff. This, you can find it on GitHub, so here it is. If you just type in Video Ape, it's like the first thing that comes up. Video Ape is a really great tool for creating these archival information packages for video files. It should work with any type of video file, MKV, MOV, DV, etc., but not with MP4s. And you'll see why in a second, but we're talking about maybe changing that in the future. So Video Ape is a bash script that creates an ape that adheres to the Bagot standard, which was developed by the Library of Congress. So from the original video file, so if you have the original MKV, it creates an MP4 access file, as well as technical metadata, manifests, and checksums. So it's also, Andrew added a great feature, because at MEPOPs we were like generating logs alongside, like when we were digitizing, we were generating like logs of technical metadata that go along with those files. Video Ape is able to like include logs you have related to your file in the ape, so that's great. Yeah, it incorporates those logs or reports into your packages. It also provides the option to sync apes or access files elsewhere. So for example, I might ask Video Ape to create the ape on hard drive 1, but I want it to sync an additional access copy to the desktop, so I don't have to mess around with anything. It's going to do it simultaneously. It's all great. Another really useful feature is the option to delete the first ape once it's been synced to a second location, which is really important for us because we don't have like just like terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of space. So that means that the apes can like be being generated on this hard drive, and then as each one is completely synced over to the second location, it can just like go through and delete it. So does that make sense that I like need less space on the one hard drive and I can have an open one? That is all explained on the video tools page. Let's see. You can also use Bagot commands to verify the apes and to rebag if necessary. I accidentally typed just one little thing wrong, and I made all these bags that had just something that wasn't supposed to be in there were in there, and I was able to use Bagot to like repackage them. It also has Andrew really wanted me to talk about this. This is his favorite function. It has an awesome function where you can create cropped access copies of your videos. So that's very exciting. It's a great tool and it's really, really easy to use, and there's pretty good documentation. I think I wrote it myself. So it's on here telling you what it does. It couldn't be easier to use. It's literally like Video Ape, L, and then you drag your video in and it just starts chugging away. we've got this all set up, so it has like screenshots and tells you exactly what to do. And yeah, it's a great tool. Does anybody have any questions?
Is the fact that you're calling it Video 8, is that a nod to TV Sheriff's Video 8?
I don't, is it?
No.
Andrew?
No. Okay. Google Video 8. All right. Spelled A-P-I. Oh, no, I'm sorry, A-P-E. Yeah, Video 8. And you'll see what I'm talking about. All right. It's pretty great. It's worth it.
I mean, maybe we'll have to like include some, you know, if your record has the little like cow or dinosaur thing, this could potentially have like a cowboy monkey cow or something, I don't know. So yeah, that's Video 8. It's really, really useful. It's super, super easy to use. It's a really, really good tool if you are making this kind of stuff. That's all I have to say about that. My name is Dinah Handel. I work at Stanford University as the Digitization Services Manager. I walked into this room and Dave asked me if I wanted to do a lightning talk, and I said sure. So now I'm doing one, so I have no slides. But I'm going to talk about how we convinced our administration to give money to an open source project. So just out of curiosity, how many people use media info in their day-to-day work? Like, would you say you use it every day? Most of the time? Yeah, so do we. We rely on it for basically everything we do in our media preservation lab. It's fundamental to our workflows, and it is also free and open source software. This story goes back a little bit. This past summer, we hosted a small media preservation unconference at our Stanford Media Preservation Lab. And a lot of different discussion topics came up, but one of them that prompted a lot of discussion and sort of strategizing around was how to financially support open source projects, and in particular how some institutions that are more well-resourced are able to potentially support these projects, because not everybody has funding at their institutions, but we're very lucky at Stanford that there is a fair amount of money, at least for something like this. Talk to me later about the lack of permanent positions in my department. So Ben Turkis, who works at the New York Public Library, suggested this like really simple idea that was kind of like, duh, of course, like why don't we do this? Of just asking and advocating for a set of funding for the year to donate to an open source project. And I think also sort of what he was getting at was how can larger institutions partner and collaborate to raise money for open source projects. But we just sort of took this idea and ran with it. And so we were like, duh, of course we should do that. And I think part of what worked in our favor is that Stanford as an institution and the digital library department, which is where our media preservation lab is located, like sort of structurally, already does a ton of open source development on our own. So there's many different applications that are developed by our team that are used across a lot of different libraries, and we're sort of active in the open source development community, and so we didn't have to sort of explain or justify why supporting open source was important. That was sort of already like base level knowledge, and so again we were sort of very we're privileged in that way, that it's sort of a known entity, and people do want to support open source within our workplace. And so we honestly wrote like a 3-sentence justification, and we sent it to our AUL, and he was like, yeah, sounds good. And so we were able to donate $500 to Media Info for the year. And I think that we'd like to make this a recurring donation, and hopefully we can up the amount, because I mean, when you think about Stanford, it is a multi-billion-dollar institution, and you're like, $500, that's nothing. Like, but it actually is meaningful and impactful for Media Info, and Jerome reached out to us and was
really awesome and kind, and we were able to facilitate the donation in a way that we didn't have to pay as many taxes on it, and so that was good too. And yeah, so that was how we got our administration to donate to an open source project. It wasn't hard, and it is kind of the result of a lot of particular circumstances of our institution. But it's something to consider, you know, even if your preservation lab could only support maybe $10 a month, that still kind of adds up. And for open source projects that really don't have any sort of regular reoccurring funding and are not in it to make money, having some kind of donation from larger institutions is impactful. And unfortunately, because Stanford has bad rules, we're not allowed to display our name on the media info site as one of the sponsors, which to me is disappointing because it, I believe it's sort of encouraging and shows that it's something that's like possible and within sort of the realm of possibility for institutions to do. So for me, that was disappointing, but we as an institution, I guess, legally can be seen as endorsing any sort of product. So that was disappointing because I think it's important to show that, you know, there is support for these things. But yeah, that is my lightning talk. Does anybody have any questions? No? Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't spell work. It's fine.
Oh no. Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Cadronell, and I've seen all my today. And I'm so sorry, the presentation. Oh, it's in preview. Yes, I've never done this before.
On your full screen, a little bit.
Wow, thank you. Yay. It's really brief. I almost didn't use them because they're a little bit out of date, and I haven't, unfortunately, we just got some funding, and so it's been a mad dash to like update all the websites and projects, so it's kind of exciting because I'm going to be debuting a prototype here today. And so my project is Open Archive. I sort of began working on it in 2011 when I went back to do my master's at UC Berkeley School of Information. It was born out of my interest in citizen journalism and how we can kind of amplify that media, and also my interest in long-term preservation. And yeah, I've done a number of interests kind of converged around Occupy, around the Arab Spring, and it was like, oh, what are we doing with our mobile media? Well, we're putting it on social media and corporate platforms, and people are getting targeted, and it was kind of a tough time. So I started thinking around this, and it was technically funded in 2015 by the Knight Foundation, and I was able to do a prototype. And we thought, where better to store your media than the Internet Archive? And so basically, me and a couple other people, a developer, it was like a ragtag team group, were able on this very small budget to make a thing for Android that could send things to the Internet Archive. And we thought it would be great to Creative Commons your work. This all is born out of a lot of research and theory that I'm not going to go into because you probably all have read it. But understanding access and consent are, huge parts of archiving, and I think when you're talking about mobile, it's so free range, and people have used it and abused it once it's put online in so many ways that it was kind of like, well, it'd be nice. Maybe people won't respect the Creative Commons license, but it's there for people who will. So that was kind of the idea, the initial project. And one thing that came up a lot during my research was that people felt like when they sent their media, they were being intercepted or potentially could be because they were being monitored. So we thought it would be really important to include a privacy tool like Tor. And there is one for Android, it's called Orbot. And I'm not going to go deep into Tor, but essentially this is kind of attacking citizen media preservation from three sides. Some of you here are familiar with the project, so I don't want to get too deep into it. But essentially, like, the need was there, but the awareness wasn't. I was doing my research just before Snowden kind of shared his revelations, and the world realized, oh, especially the first world, we're being monitored all the time, and it's even easier now with all these tools. So we thought, okay, it would be really nice to, you know, get funding and support, but unfortunately a lot of organizations and funding folks weren't quite there yet. So it's taken 5 years for me to get sustainable funding, and I've been working on it on the side and volunteering, and finally I have long-term sustainable funding, and I'm excited because this is something I love working with everyone in every different field that I get to work with now, just doing this full time. So I don't want to go too deep into the features. I actually just want to share the prototype if that's okay, since it's just, I'm gonna actually, hold on, sorry. I apologize, I've been battling migraines for 3 days, so I'm just like not 100%. So please, if you have questions or I've skipped over a bunch of things, don't hesitate to ask once I'm done showing you my awesome new prototype. So this is an interactive kind of tool, and after the welcome screen, after all the branding, whatever, essentially you are able to now use this application to send media anywhere. So it's from your camera roll. You don't have to import, you don't have to like take the video in the application, which makes everything a little bit more difficult and takes a lot of money for development. But essentially, once you decide where you're sending it, you can send it to the Internet Archive. You can also send it to a private server, which is what is increasingly going to happen. I've partnered with Human Rights Watch. Nicole Martin, some of you may know her, is my user zero, and we are working to help solve a lot of the problems they have when they're receiving media from researchers in the field. Their workflow is kind of just, you know, slapdash, and the fact that there is an archivist at a human rights organization is a huge deal. There aren't very many. And so we really wanted to kind of harness this opportunity to create something that will most likely be useful to many other organizations, large and small. And so they are my use case, and you will start seeing that as I go through. So let's say we want to connect to a private server. Maybe Human Rights Watch. The user essentially will probably preload a lot of this information into the phone with the app. So they're not like in the field, you don't really have to worry too much about knowing what the server name is and all that. If you are setting it up for a group, like they have technical folks at Human Rights Watch. If you're a tiny community, for example, we also want to make it easy for us if we're supporting them, whether it's grants or it's just volunteering or whatnot. Our business model is still evolving, but essentially we want to make it really easy for anyone to do this so that the people who kind of are managing the archive long term are the ones who understand everything. So whether it's Nextcloud or it's any kind of backend, whoever installs this should not have to worry too much about this. And so once you connect to your server, you can then start uploading media. And what's really interesting, so Human Rights Watch has a number of projects around the world, and they're all very different, and they all have different names and are going on at different times, and most researchers only work on one. But there's a lot of researchers, there's also videographers, and there's other people who are sending media into the, you know, we figure out where to do that. And I think one huge problem, you know, issue for Nicole is just when she gets a ton of media and it's just kind of sitting there, it takes a lot of time to parse, and it's not always coming in any kind of uniform way, and the formats are different and the names are different. So she and I have worked to create kind of a workflow so that you can set up your own folders on an interim server, and then you are able to map it to the app. So for example, you select all the recent photos, and I'm not going to go too deep into like this part of it, but you're adding it to this this folder that I had just chosen, and I'm sorry I can go back maybe, but I'm not going to. But anyway, so now it's in the folder, it's named properly, it's going to Nicole, and Nicole will also, just like download it and save it on her local server, and it's done. And so one thing that was really important that came up in our research is that a lot of this media will be graphic. And it's a huge problem when people are intaking the media to not be prepared when they're looking at it. A lot of the people who have to review human rights abuses need to be in therapy. There's like a huge protocol that's evolving, but best practices and standards aren't there yet. So we want to make sure that people can mark it as graphic, and so then it actually gets rerouted into a totally different folder within the folder. So there's subfolders. The other thing that this doesn't show is that all media will be sent with proof mode, and proof mode is a verification packet that essentially gets sent with like each individual image or video or audio. And it grabs metadata from around like cell towers, and it uses all these different ways to verify the location, the time, and it hashes it so it's like extra verified. So it's kind of like notarizing the media. So when you get it with this packet that's separate, but it's a document that maps to it, and it is very difficult to, like there's no, like if it's not intact, like you will know that it's been tampered with essentially, and it most likely will essentially prove that this media was taken when and where and how, and what kind of phone and who did it. And so it's extremely sensitive. You wouldn't want this on the Internet Archive, for example. But in these organizations that will need to verify that these interviews, and a lot of this work honestly happens after the fact. So it's not like they're in a war or they're literally witnessing the war crimes right then or human rights abuses, but they're actually interviewing people after. So it's a little bit less important maybe for these organizations, but it's extremely important for folks collecting for the Syrian Archive or people who are like, you know, submitting extremely intense and potentially, you know, legally, I don't know how to say it, but that will go straight to the International Criminal Court and need to be verified. Like those folks are extremely interested in proof mode. Whereas it's helpful for Nicole to have this. It's helpful for archivists to be able to say, hey, like I have all this media and it's 100% real, but these are not going to be used in testimony. They're going to be used to build cases, so it's a little bit different. But anyways, sorry, I don't want to get too long, but I think that might actually be it. Besides adding that, you can also tag people and individuals, which comes up a lot because researchers are working with a large group of people that need to corroborate their stories and work together to kind of build the entire narrative. And I think that's all for the prototype, but I'm working with some amazing people in both human rights and preservation, and I think that the goal is going to be this will be useful for anyone. So anyone who wants to put their media somewhere they know they can find it later and they want to share it with the world but not have it just be on corporate platforms, they will be able to send it to the Internet Archive. And hopefully folks will be more and more interested in documenting and preserving their movements, because a lot of that is actually being taken away from people once it's off their phones and somewhere else. And I'm hoping that large organizations will be interested in a media management kind of system from front to back end that helps keep everything together, organized, verifiable. And I think that's it. Does anyone have questions? Sorry, thanks for bearing with me. Okay. I was gonna leave this up if you are interested in. Yay. Checking out more.
All right, thanks again to all our speakers, and have a nice reception, and see you in Baltimore.
Can I do a quick
yeah.
talk? Do we have time?
Yeah.
All right.
Whoa.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't find you in the back, so give me a sec here. Where's text edit at in here?
You can search it now.
So what?
Use the search bar at the top.
I'm Skip Elsheimer. You might remember me from various things that I've done with David Rice and AV Geeks and things like that. The name of my quick presentation is Fuck Apple. I've been noted to be a person who does not like Apple for many reasons, and I've griped about it for many years. And the reason why is, and I have 8 Macs, So I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just this biased Windows Mac person. I also have Windows machines. But one of the things I want you guys to think about, and I issue this as a challenge, is that is the Apple Macintosh an open source platform for you in the truest sense? It's expensive. It is, every time we get a new OS, it's being crippling to whatever you used to be able to do. I mean, MPEG Streamclip was my go-to. It was my Swiss Army knife forever. If you have a new operating system, you can't use it at all. Final Cut Pro, which was a brilliant piece of software back in the day. Final Cut 10 is a piece of shit. It's only a matter of time before QuickTime goes away, and entirely, and they won't say why. It'll just be one day it won't work anymore. If you think about the ports on the new Macs, the new hardware, well, one, there's no place to put a DVD anymore because that's gone. The new types of ports keep changing over and over and over again, so you have to keep buying new dongles or you have to keep doing whatever. And I just kind of wonder, are we doing anybody a favor by always developing on a Mac? You know, Windows is not great. Linux is great in many ways. It's harder, but I'm just wondering, are we doing ourselves a favor by creating these tools that are only on the Mac? I mean, the reason why I still buy Macs is because of some of these tools. They're only available on the Mac, but to tell someone like, oh, well, you need to go down and spend, you know, $1,500 on a Mac Mini, which is now super powered, but not really super powered in many ways, I just think it's a problem, or we're kind of perpetuating over time. So, as the last thing is, there's no save as anymore. What I said, I mean, save as has been around how long? 40 years, 30 years? Why did they get rid of save as? I mean, it's little things like that that just drive me nuts. So, anyways, any questions? Any is everybody kind of?
I have a question.
Yes.
Which tools in particular are you referring to?
That I like to use.
That are Mac only.
Well, vRecord is one, and it's a super helpful tool. And I know it's just probably harder to develop on Windows, but to tell people like, oh, well, you want to capture to FFV1 Matroska, or you're going to have to get a Mac, is just, it breaks my heart a little bit to make people have to do that. And I've decided I'm not buying any more new Macs, and I've actually uninstalled new operating systems, and I've stopped at Sierra. So that's another problem. Anytime that anybody develops some new update, I can't use it because I'm stuck in Sierra. Yes?
You're not wrong on almost all of this, but there is save as. You just have to hold down Alt when you have the file menu.
Oh. All right, so let me just say something.
Or the really comfortable, convenient Command Alt Shift S. Super annoying, but it's there.
No, seriously, fuck Mac. Any other?
Well, on the same note, I was going to add the comment, I switched to a Mac recently on the job page one. I've been complaining about it constantly, and I couldn't figure out how to piece this plain text, which is a normal, very functional thing, and it is Shift Option Command plus B, rather than anything that can be done with right click. Which also.
No, seriously.
Well, getting into this for years, Mac is a better system on disability issues and things like that. And they more or less retreated to that while Microsoft has done much better. I can tell you if you have some sort of motor disability or limited usability, a 4-button at once command is probably not that smart.
No. And the other thing is that, you know, you think about the direction that Apple's heading in with their OS. I mean, there's the eventual merging of Mac OS with iOS, which will turn your, you know, $2,000 whatever into basically a way to spend money and to be a spy for other corporations. Anything you do on it, you know, they're just trying to sell you stuff. It's not a tool anymore. And I have to constantly uninstall things or hack things to get it to do what I want it to do. And that's very frustrating.
All right, so I have Macs too, and like you do, Ben, I don't disagree, but my experience of trying to do anything on a Windows computer is mostly because once my phone wasn't working and I had to check my email at my parents' house, so I got to have a little Windows experience for that. But I don't know how to work as a functioning archivist at all if I only had to use a Windows computer. So like, how do you envision a transition period to something that's better? Because like it seems like what's happening, we're just going to have to move into this acceptance that archival work and our relationship with computers is going to be unending pain, but do you foresee something better?
Well, that's the problem, is that obviously we're not, I don't ever feel like we were the customers. Moving image archivists have always glommed on other things. And thankfully sometimes we happen to strike it lucky as far as like, oh, well, it happens that motion picture studios use this software, or it just happens, that's why we were using Final Cut Pro to capture stuff, because it just happened that people were actively editing in that, and we could just use that. I don't know. I mean, the thing is maybe coming up with like an AV archivist Linux distribution. That's like, it's got all the tools, you put it in, you load it onto whatever machine, and it installs all the tools that you need, and then comes up with ways to update things, like FFmpeg, whatever. Maybe that's the key, is you steer away from Windows, you steer away from Mac, and you just come up with, you roll your own type of thing.
We can do with more or less everything in our company on Linux. So now 90% or more can be done that. And I think in a short period of time, we have also a report that works on Linux.
Yeah, and then, so would you make available a distribution?
Yeah.
So there we go. There we go.
I propose a fuck Apple panel in Baltimore next year.
Oh yeah, the bastard film encounter, yes.
No. And then
Yep. Oh, at AMIA. Oh,
yeah.
well, both, okay. Thanks very much.
Like anyone else? We good? All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks to the speakers. See you later.